Free speech is under attack. Again, of course it is. This time it's from social media censors using claims of fake news to silence opinions online that they just don't like. More than 100 academics, historians and journalists have signed a declaration handed to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, warning that social networks, government officials and NGOs are attempting to label legitimate views as disinformation. This follows revelations that a secretive government unit was working with intelligence agencies to monitor online posts criticising lockdown during the COVID pandemic. Well, joining me right now is Bryn Harris. He's Chief Legal Counsel at the Free Speech Union. Good afternoon to you, Bryn.
Hi, Julia. Good to see you.
Thanks for joining us. Well, I mean, I've got a special interest in this as one of the signatories of this letter to Rishi Sunak, but also one of the journalists who was, I still find quite bizarre, monitored online. Yes, tweets that were in the public domain, but even some that were jokes that were flagged as misinformation, disinformation by two different government units. Had some more information recently, which I think we're going to talk about on air next week, about what they did with this information. And I've got to be honest with you, it's pretty darn sinister. The people who've signed this letter are from a whole variety of different backgrounds and views. I mean, you've got the author Jordan Peterson, you've got Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, you've got John Cleese, you've got Richard Dawkins, the historian Robert Toombs, the American whistleblower Edward Snowden, Toby Young, of course, the Free Speech Union, for which you represent. I'm also a member, and many others who were involved with, say, exposing what was going on between social media companies like Twitter and after Elon Musk bought it, what was really going on in terms of that. So tell us how this is being done, first of all.
Well, I mean, in terms of the monitoring of disinformation, it tends to be, as far as I know, sort of left to really somewhat unaccountable bodies and people. I think we all know that Elon Musk's Twitter has created this new community notes system, which I think is a very good move in the right direction. It says that we essentially should sort of crowdsource our judgment of whether a news source is true or false. The alternative, which I think is much more problematic, is that social media companies may overly rely on those who are sort of self-appointed arbiters of what's true and what's false. And that obviously involves organizations really taking upon themselves a power that really shouldn't exist in a liberal democracy.
Well, as you say, crucially, they are completely unaccountable. Unelected, unaccountable people, even the fact checkers. We have these sort of fact checkers at the BBC or other fact check groups. I mean, I know one person who has been involved in fact checking me, who's a member of Extinction Rebellion. Well, I mean, do you think he's coming from a neutral stance, I wonder? I mean, and this is the thing, and what people choose to fact check. Whenever the BBC's got in touch with me with their fact checky people, I've always said, OK, over COVID, why have you not fact-checked this statement from this person? Why are you fact-checking what little old me is saying, but not what the government advisors are saying? And this is the thing, isn't it? It's just got to be this idea, this norm that somehow, if someone has written something that, I don't know, whoever decides they don't like, often just the social media companies, often, as we now know, in cahoots with the US government, the British government and other governments, as there's exposés of what was going on behind the scenes at Twitter before Elon Musk purchased it, that they can just censor it. Whereas what my view, and I'm sure your view would be, and people watching and listening to this show, I hope would be, if it's a bad idea, if it's untrue, we can challenge it online. We can point out, no, the evidence doesn't back you up. This is a wrong claim. This is why that's wrong. We can challenge those ideas. I'm not threatened by anyone posting something untrue or unverifiable because I can challenge it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, we've always had arbiters of truth and falsity in political debate, and they're called voters. And it's for a free electorate informed by a free press to make decisions for themselves about what they think is true and what is false. Now, I think these sort of arbiters are making a huge demand. They're saying, trust in our wisdom and benevolence to control the flow of information into the public square. Now, I mean, I don't think there's anybody I would trust, not even, David Attenborough, to hold that power and to put the thumb on the scale and to say, this is the regulated debate you can have. And I think the important thing is that those academics, the technocrats and moderators who make these decisions as to what's true and false, well, how do we think they do it? They have arguments. They get things wrong.
Yeah. But we know they get things wrong. I've had people challenge me on things I've said and tweeted about COVID during 2020, 2021. And they said, well, you got this wrong. Yeah, I didn't get everything. Well, funnily enough, not an expert, didn't get everything right. But I tell you what, put what I said and my interpretation of evidence against an awful lot of the experts, I have a much better hit rate than a lot of them, given the evidence we are seeing now. But this is the thing. This kind of went into overdrive over COVID, but it was already happening. I mean, Brendan Chilton's here in the studio. We'll come to you in a second on this, over things like over Brexit. This idea, oh, you can't say that because that's untrue. No, challenge it if it's not true. And this idea that somehow these things are dangerous, that it is dangerous for us to hear these ideas, even when someone is spouting something horrific, even if it's someone who is, shouting horrible racist things or misogynistic things. I'm of the view I would rather know that that's what those people are saying and thinking and have the ability to challenge it, and then we can make a judgment about that person and what they've said.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we've got to accept is that rumor, especially in times of war or in sort of troubled times, is a fact of life. It's part of the human condition. You go back to Homer, you have portrayals of rumor. So we can't live in this sanitized world where we're all talking to each other, but there's a sort of ministry of anti-rumor, which is going to prevent this basic sort of fact of human life. So I think to a degree we've got to accept that we've got free sources of news, and we've got responsible journalists, but there's going to be rumor. It's going to happen, and we can't protect ourselves from things like that. I think the other danger is that we end up with this real two-tier system where the experts are allowed to debate, they're allowed to go wrong, they're allowed to err, and everyone else just has to have this really sanitized conversation.
Yeah, well, because that's treating us like children. And the key thing here is it's all about, isn't it, treating us like children, protecting us, keeping us safe. When did we hear that before?